Is that what you call a truck? Too old to be behind the wheel, aren't you, Pops? A young guy hollered through his car window. The older driver stayed silent, simply tightening his seat belt before pulling away. Come morning, as three shiny SUVs rolled out of town, a pair of Humvees cut them off. Marines climbed out, and one declared, "We don't stand for anyone disrespecting our old commander like that." What sort of person inspires Marines to show up just to back his quiet dignity? Welcome to Echoes of Truth. Let's dig into the real story. John Harper's calloused hands held the wheel of his trusty 1984 Ford pickup with the ease of someone who'd spent a lifetime driving. At 71, his movements weren't as spry as they once were, but his wits were as keen as ever. That truck, with its peeling silver paint and an engine that grumbled now and then, had been his faithful sidekick for nearly 3 decades. After years as a logistics specialist in the U.S. Marine Corps, John had slipped into civilian life with the same understated grit that marked his service days. He called a simple mobile home on the edge of Oakville home, where folks around town just knew him as the dependable delivery man. John earned his keep hauling packages and sometimes tinkering with engines for neighbors too strapped to hire a pro. Each day at 5 a.m. he'd rise without needing an alarm, neatly folding his blankets like he was still in the barracks, ready to tackle the day with steady purpose. Complaints about early runs or late-night repair jobs never crossed his lips. Locals swore you could sync your clock to John's predictable comings and goings. That Tuesday he was on a long delivery that meant an overnight stay. As evening settled in, he steered into Ridgeview Gas and Market, a pit stop off Highway 70 near Willow Creek. His truck was thirsty for gas, and his stiff back begged for a quick break. Pulling up to the pumps, John spotted 3 slick black SUVs nearby, their glossy surfaces catching the glow of the station's lights. A bunch of young guys in pricey outdoor gear leaned against their rides, swapping tales and chuckling loudly. Probably thrill-seekers back from a weekend escapade, John figured. Once his tank was full, John shuffled toward the station to settle up. Passing the group, a guy around 25, decked out in a fancy fleece and shades despite the dimming sky, elbowed his buddy. "Man, check out that junker," he said, raising his voice. "Is that thing even roadworthy? Belongs in a scrapyard, not out here." His pals cracked up, egged on by their crew and the beers they'd obviously been knocking back. Another guy tapped his knuckles on John's truck door as he walked by. "Yo, old man, haven't you retired yet? Or are you just too hard-headed to quit driving before you cause a wreck?" Inside, the cashier, a kid barely past high school, avoided John's gaze as he reached the counter. An older woman in line gave a subtle head shake but kept quiet. The taunts from outside carried clearly through the store's flimsy walls. "That's $43.75, the cashier muttered, eyes fixed downward. John handed over cash, carefully counting out exact change from a well-worn wallet. With a nod of thanks, he headed back out, his expression as steady as stone. The group's jeers got sharper as he neared his truck, some mockingly plugging their ears when he fired up the engine, which sputtered briefly before humming steadily. John ignored them, checking his mirrors, buckling up, and shifting into gear. As he eased past, he cracked his window slightly. "She's old, sure," he murmured almost to himself. "But she's hauled more than you'd ever guess." Without a glance back, John merged onto the highway, his taillights fading into the dusk. The young guys traded smirks and shrugs, quickly dismissing the old man and his beat-up truck, clueless that their brief clash would spark something far bigger. Behind the counter, the young clerk leaned toward the station's owner, an older woman who'd seen the whole thing go down. "Mrs. Thompson, that was John Harper," he said under his breath. "My uncle served with him in Iraq, says Harper was practically a myth in their unit." Mrs. Thompson gave a slow nod. "Folks don't get that being old and reserved isn't a sign of frailty. Sometimes it means you've been through enough to know you don't need to flex for anybody. When the world looks away, all you've got left is your own moral compass." Curious about what went down next? As John's truck vanished down the road, Ethan Riley, the young clerk at the gas station, couldn't shake the unease gnawing at him. His uncle had shared tales of a Marine driver who'd pulled off life-saving heroics in Iraq, a guy now living a low-key life nearby. "Mrs. Thompson, those punks need to know who they just mocked," Ethan said, eyes still on the door. The older woman shook her head. "That's not your fight, Ethan. Harper obviously doesn't crave the spotlight or he'd have clapped back himself." Ethan grudgingly got back to work, but his uncle's stories kept looping in his head. From his spot at the register, he could see the SUVs outside, their owners now sprawled in the diner next door, ordering food and more drinks. Through the diner's big windows, Ethan watched them reenact the run-in with over-the-top gestures, one mimicking a hunched-over geezer at the wheel while another faked dozing off mid-drive. Their laughter boomed across the nearly empty diner. From their table, the guys couldn't spot the faded military ID dangling from John's rearview or the understated Marine Corps sticker on his back window, small hints of a life of duty that didn't scream for attention. Meanwhile, John had checked into the Cedar Rest Motel a few miles down the road. He arranged his sparse belongings with the same crisp order he'd learned in the Corps, then sat on the bed's edge, pulling out his wallet. Tucked behind his license was a worn photo, 4 Marines in front of a supply truck, arms slung over each other's shoulders in a dusty desert. John's finger lingered on their faces for a moment before he slipped the picture back and turned in for the night. Back at Ridgeview Gas and Market, Ethan clocked out at 10 p.m. The group of guys had paid up and stumbled back to their SUVs, clearly buzzed but planning to crash in their vehicles until morning. As Ethan headed to his car, he caught snippets of their chatter. The look on that old guy's face when you banged on his truck? Gold. Bet that's the most action he's seen in years. Should have offered to call a tow truck for that heap. Ethan lingered in his car, keys untouched, grappling with a choice. After a few minutes, he grabbed his phone and dialed. "Uncle Tom, it's Ethan. Sorry for the late call, but I need to talk about something." Dawn broke crisp and chilly over Willow Creek. The 3 young guys crawled out of their SUVs, yawning and rubbing their eyes from light hangovers. They hit the gas station's restrooms, grabbed coffee and breakfast sandwiches, and got ready to head back to the city. "Time to roll," Brandon, the group's apparent ringleader, said. "I've got work meetings tomorrow I can't blow off." They pulled out in a tight convoy, aiming for the highway on-ramp. Nearing the first intersection, they froze as 2 military Humvees loomed ahead, blocking the road. 6 Marines in crisp uniforms stood by the vehicles, their stance all business. "What's this about?" Brandon grumbled, easing his SUV to a halt, the others lining up behind him. A Marine officer stepped forward toward Brandon's window, his uniform tag reading Captain Daniel Riley. "Morning, gentlemen," he said, voice calm but firm. "I'll need IDs from all 3 drivers who were at Ridgeview Gas and Market last night." Brandon, rattled and a bit nervous, dug for his wallet. "What's the deal?" "We didn't break any laws." "IDs, please," Captain Riley said again, his face unreadable. The other Marines held their ground, eyes sharp but neutral. A small crowd was forming, locals drawn by the rare sight of military vehicles in their quiet town, plus a few travelers rerouted by the blockade. As Brandon passed over his license, a young girl slipped from her mom's grip in the swelling crowd and darted forward. "This is about Mr. Harper," she shouted. "He rescued those soldiers who were stuck." Her mother quickly pulled her back, but the words hung in the air. Whispers rippled through the onlookers and more folks trickled out from nearby stores and houses. Captain Riley studied each ID closely before turning to the 3 uneasy young men. "Last night at Ridgeview Gas and Market, you crossed paths with a man driving a 1984 Ford pickup. You decided to poke fun at him, mocking his age and his ride." Brandon squirmed in his seat. "We were just messing around, no big deal." Captain Riley's gaze sharpened just a touch. That man was John Harper, former staff sergeant in the U.S. Marine Corps. He earned a Bronze Star with a Combat V for bravery in action. He locked eyes with each of them, letting the weight settle. Back in 2004, in Anbar Province, Iraq, Harper was behind the wheel of a supply truck when his convoy got hit hard. Under intense fire, he drove through the kill zone, not once but 3 times, to pull out wounded Marines and critical gear after others wouldn't budge. The crowd had thickened, hanging on every word as Captain Riley went on. 7 Marines, myself included, are alive today because of what he did. He took shrapnel on that last run but wouldn't leave until every man was safe. Brandon and his buddies sat speechless, the sting of their taunts from the night before now impossible to shrug off. Harper never chased glory for what he did, Riley added. After his discharge, he chose a quiet life, still helping his neighbors without making a fuss. He's never leaned on his hero status for favors or attention. Captain Daniel Riley stood taller, his Marine posture sharpening with purpose. "We're not here on official orders today. My team and I came as fellow Marines to stand up for a man of honor who was disrespected right in front of us." Right on time, the familiar rumble of a 1984 Ford pickup rolled up from the other side of the intersection. John Harper, oblivious to the scene unfolding, eased off the gas, eyeing the crowd and military vehicles with a puzzled frown. "That's him," a voice shouted from the gathering. "That's John Harper." Ever witnessed someone brushed off as ordinary only to learn they've carried the lives of others on their shoulders? Drop respect if honor still means something to you. John's truck came to a full stop as he absorbed the surprising sight. His lined face flickered with confusion, then a hint of worry as he clocked the Humvees. Moving with measured care, he shifted into park, stepped out, and stood upright, his age not dimming his quiet dignity. Captain Riley snapped a sharp salute as John approached, a deep sign of respect shared between Marines. After a brief pause, John returned the gesture, his muscle memory kicking in with the crisp precision of his Corps days. "Staff Sergeant Harper," Riley said with formal respect, "it's a privilege to see you again, sir." "Captain," John replied, his voice soft but steady, "what's going on here? Is something wrong?" "No issues, Staff Sergeant. We're just here to clear up who you are and what you've accomplished." John's gaze shifted from Riley to the young men in the SUVs, a look of realization crossing his weathered features. "This isn't needed, Captain. It's all in the past." "With all due respect, sir, I see it differently," Riley countered. Turning to the three young men still in their vehicles, he added, "These fellows have something they'd like to say to you." Brandon, catching the cue, hesitantly climbed out of his SUV, his friends trailing behind with eyes glued to the ground. "Sir," Brandon started, the formal address awkward on his lips, "we're sorry for how we acted yesterday. We crossed a line and were disrespectful." John gave a slight shake of his head. "You didn't know who I was. No real damage done." "That's not the issue, sir," Captain Riley cut in. "Respect isn't just for those we know have earned it, it's what we owe everyone, especially our elders." One of Brandon's buddies stepped up, voice shaky. "My granddad was in Vietnam. If someone treated him the way we treated you..." He faltered, unable to finish the thought. John looked them over for a moment before speaking. "When you're my age, you figure out which fights matter. That one didn't." As the conversation played out, more Willow Creek locals gathered, including veterans who grasped the weight of the moment. Word had spread, and a Willow Creek Herald reporter was now streaming the scene live on the paper's social media. Captain Riley turned to the crowd. "A lot of you might not realize it, but a true hero lives quietly among you. Back in 2004, Staff Sergeant John Harper was a transport driver in Anbar Province, Iraq. His courage during Operation Desert Shield saved many lives, including mine." Riley dove deeper into the story, describing how a forward base had been hammered by a fierce attack, leaving Marines stranded behind enemy lines. Rescue attempts had stalled under relentless gunfire on the only road in. Staff Sergeant Harper stepped up to drive the last working transport through that chaos, Riley said. Even with orders to hold for air support, he knew the wounded couldn't wait. John stood there, visibly uneasy as his past was laid bare, his eyes locked on some far-off point. "He pushed through a live firefight, got 7 wounded Marines to safety," Riley went on. "When he heard vital comms gear was still out there, he went back. And when one Marine was still missing, he made a third run." A quiet wave of awe passed through the crowd. On that last trip, his truck took heavy damage. Harper caught shrapnel in his side but kept driving until everyone was secure. Even then, he wouldn't take medical help until all his men were cared for. Riley turned to face John directly. "Sir, we never got the chance to thank you properly. The mission was classified, the records got buried, and by the time things cleared up, you'd already gone home and left the Corps." John spoke up, his voice calm but firm. "I was just doing my duty, Captain. Any Marine would have stepped up." "You're mistaken there, sir," Riley replied. "I was on that mission. I saw others back out. What you did was beyond even Marine standards." With a nod from Riley, another Marine stepped forward, holding a small wooden box. He opened it to reveal a medal on a blue ribbon, the Navy and Marine Corps Commendation Medal with a Combat V. "This was meant for you years ago," Riley said. "We've fixed that oversight. On behalf of the Marine Corps and the men you saved, it's my honor to give you the recognition you deserve." As Riley pinned the medal to John's flannel, the Marines around him snapped to attention, offering a formal salute. The crowd, feeling the gravity of the moment, went completely still. Brandon and his friends watched, their unease growing as the depth of their mistake hit home. Just yesterday, they'd scoffed at a man they thought was nobody, only to learn he was someone they could only dream of measuring up to. Following the medal ceremony, the spontaneous event blossomed into a heartfelt community gathering. Folks from Willow Creek, unaware of John's past, lined up to clasp his hand in gratitude. Veterans among them exchanged soft-spoken words with him, their shared bond of service shining through in quiet glances. The crowd drifted to the Ridgeview Gas and Market where the whole incident had kicked off. Mrs. Thompson, the station's owner, declared free coffee and breakfast for anyone eager to hear more about their hometown hero. As the group settled at the gas station, Brandon approached John again, his voice heavy with remorse. "Sir, I'm at a loss for words, but I'm deeply sorry for how we treated you," he said, his earlier cockiness replaced by sincere regret. "We sized you up based on your age and that old truck, and we couldn't have misjudged you more." John eyed the young man thoughtfully for a moment. "Want to know the toughest thing I picked up in the Marines?" Brandon shook his head. "It's that real character shows in what you do when no one's looking, not when you've got an audience. Yesterday, you figured no one important was watching." "I get that now, sir," Brandon murmured, his voice subdued. "Then this whole ordeal was worth something," John replied with a nod. The gas station buzzed with the vibe of an unplanned town meeting. Captain Riley shared more stories of John's bravery while longtime locals marveled at the incredible history their quiet neighbor had kept under wraps. The most moving moment came when an 8-year-old boy stepped up, clutching a handmade card. "My dad was a Marine too," he said shyly. "He always said true heroes don't brag about their deeds. I didn't get it until I saw you today." John took the card with the same gravity he'd shown accepting his medal. "Sounds like your dad's a smart man," he told the boy gently. "Hang on to that lesson." By mid-afternoon, what started as a tense standoff had morphed into a joyful tribute to service and integrity. The story rippled beyond Willow Creek via social media, with #RespectTheQuietOnes gaining traction across the region. Local veteran groups started planning a proper ceremony to honor John, and the town council floated the idea of naming a stretch of highway after him. Mrs. Thompson, quick to embrace the moment, put up a new sign above the gas station door where a hero stood in silence. John, true to form, took the accolades with his usual modesty. When folks finally coaxed him to the microphone for a few words, he kept it simple. "I'm grateful for all this, though I never asked for it. Truth is, I'm just one of many veterans who answered the call when it came. Some got medals, most didn't. It's not the medal that makes a Marine, it's the heart to serve." He paused, scanning the faces around him. "If you want to honor me, do it by remembering a person's worth isn't in their appearance, their ride, or how loud they talk. It's in the choices they make when it's easier to do wrong than right." As the day wound down, Brandon and his buddies got ready to hit the road, their egos thoroughly checked by the day's events. Before they left, Brandon sought out Captain Riley. "Sir, how'd you even know what went down last night? How'd you track us down?" Riley nodded toward Ethan, the young gas station clerk. "My nephew works here. After he saw how you treated Staff Sergeant Harper, he gave me a call. I was already set to visit this weekend, but I rounded up some buddies and showed up early." Brandon gave a slow nod. "I'm glad he called. We needed to learn that lesson. Everyone needs a wake-up call now and then," Riley said. "What matters is if you grow from it. Ever seen someone ridiculed only to have their whole town rally behind them? Drop one word: honor. If you believe good folks always shine through." In the weeks that followed, Willow Creek slipped back into its usual groove, but with a new undercurrent of pride. John Harper kept rolling in his old Ford pickup, delivering packages and patching up engines for neighbors in need. Yet now, when he pulled into a diner or gas station, folks stood a bit taller, offering a quiet nod or a heartfelt "thanks for your service." John accepted the gestures graciously but never chased them. His days stayed the same, up at 5 a.m., tending to his truck with care, lending a hand without fanfare. The recognition, though nice, didn't change how he saw himself or his place in the world. Ridgeview Gas and Market turned into a bit of a local legend. Mrs. Thompson hung a framed photo of John in his Marine dress blues by the register, captioned simply, "Where a hero stood in silence." Travelers and veterans, drawn by the story spreading through social media and military networks, would swing by, hoping to spot the unassuming hero who'd caught the nation's eye for a moment. The town's welcome sign got a makeover, now boasting "Home of John Harper, Veteran of Honor." John had quietly objected, but when the mayor explained it was about the values he embodied, he let it slide. Ethan Riley, the young clerk whose phone call sparked it all, enlisted in the Marine Corps himself. Before heading to boot camp, he penned a piece for the local paper that went viral in national outlets. "I saw with my own eyes how silence can outshine any boast." Mr. Harper didn't need to stand up for himself. Real strength doesn't crave applause. It's grounded in what you do, not what you say. As Willow Creek leaned into its role as a town that cherished quiet heroism, 3 core truths summed up John's story. Not everyone craves a spotlight, some just need a path to walk and a reason to stay humble. Honor isn't something you pin on your shirt, it's how you carry yourself when no one's around. Don't dismiss someone just because they're quiet. Sometimes the softest voices hold the deepest wisdom. The truest tribute wasn't in ceremonies or headlines, but in how the community changed. People started noticing the quiet ones among them, those whose simple exteriors might hide remarkable tales of courage and sacrifice. Justice might take its time, but it always shows up. Keep doing what's right, no matter the odds. When did you hold your ground against a world pushing back? Share your story. Subscribe to Echoes of Truth to see how truth and justice always win out. Pass this video to someone who needs a reminder to keep faith in doing good. We shared their tale, you gave it heart. Thank you.